Hello, everyone, and welcome again to On Tour as we look ahead to the second test, West Indies versus Zimbabwe, once again in Bulawayo. I'm Barry Wilkinson. Thank you so much for joining us. With me, of course, covering the series is the cricket connoisseur, Aaron Viles. And this second test being played again in Bulawayo. Remember that the first test ended in a draw as the West Indies has set the Zimbabweans 272 to win. They fell 6 wickets down, but the Windies just didn't have enough time. A lot of rain in that first test. And Aaron, unfortunately, the forecast over there is for more rain again. Let's talk forecast first of all. It doesn't look very promising for 5 full days of test cricket, does it?
No, it doesn't, Barry. Unfortunately not. Yet again, the rain may play spoil sports in Bulawayo this week. In particular, again, for the first 2 days. Day 2, I've got to say, I have had a look at the forecast. Heavy rain scheduled for the majority of the day. So fingers crossed we can get some play in the first couple of days. But if not, we could be looking at a repeat of the events that happened in the first test. But as cricket fans, remain positive, remain optimistic. Fingers crossed the rain does stay away in Bulawayo for the second test.
We saw quite an exciting first test. Of course, we spoke so much and so eloquently about Tajurine Chandapol, about the batting of Craig Brathwaite, that massive record opening stand. But the Windies must look very carefully going into this second test at their lineup. Was the bowling penetrative enough? Shannon Gabriel apparently is fit. Are we going to see perhaps Kemar Roach being dropped and Shannon Gabriel partnering Azari Joseph where the bowling is concerned? Let's talk a little about that, and then we're going to hear, of course, from the captain, Craig Brathwaite, his thoughts on that first test. But we want to talk, first of all, the penetration of the West Indies, because in the end, that could have cost them not winning that test in the end.
Well, it did, Barry. And I mentioned this in the review show, the fact that at one point the West Indies had Zimbabwe 192 for 7 in that first innings, and they just could not penetrate the tail. Gary Balance was exceptional, and you do have to give him his credit and his plaudits, but in another situation, on another game, you do have to have a look and go, could the West Indies have maybe been a bit more cutthroats? And that is something which is up for debate. So they'll be a bit disappointed with that first test, but then again, there was rain. Balance played exceptionally well, and sometimes that does, happen in Test cricket. You have to take your cap off to the opposition for the way in which they played, and they did bat quite magnificently at times in that first innings. In terms of changes for the second test, it's an interesting one, Barry, because I also do think they will drop Kemar Roach, and that is a long-term thing. I think they'll be taking a look ahead to the South Africa series, where he will be a spearhead for that West Indies bowling attack. Whether or not it will be Shannon Gabriel who replaces him, though, I think is another story, and it depends on the pitch, because Bulawayo, as we saw in that first test, is a relatively lifeless surface. And you look at the West Indies, they've already got seam options. So you've got Azari Joseph. It'll be good to get him into rhythm. You've got Jason Holder. You've got Kyle Mayers. You've got Raymond Reefer as well, if you need him. I actually think the West Indies, if the pitch is similar, might go for the extra spin bowler, because Jamel Warrican is in the squad. So that's how I personally would go about it. You've seen in this series, we saw in the 2017 series as well, spin dominates. So, for example, Mavuta took a 5-fer in the first test. Moti took a 4-fer. Chase looked dangerous. Mazakadze looked dangerous for Zimbabwe. So, if it was up to me, that would be the change I would make. I'd keep the batting the exact same. You want to get these guys into some rhythm, some form, runs under the belts. But I do wonder if the West Indies will be looking at this second test. If that pitch is similar, could we see a third spin bowler in the lineup?
It's a very interesting perspective. Well, you know what? Let's hear from Craig Brathwaite, because Craig Brathwaite talked up a storm at the end of that first test. And let's get his perspective as to how he thought the Windies went wrong in not perhaps winning. Was it time? Was it the fact that they lacked penetration? Here are the thoughts of Craig Brathwaite.
Craig, you were impressed or not, almost scoring another double 100, looking at the past openers, Desmond Haynes and the like. In terms of your legacy going forward, do you think you're almost getting there as a player now that you are a test specialist and you've done really well in the ICC test team of the year, and from here you go to South Africa?
Well, I'm far from there, but I think I'm no beginning, so a long way to go. Don't want to take anything for granted.
Okay, Craig, the events of this past 5 days, what did they say about Test cricket? Especially there was a time when you were on top, and then it seems as if Zimbabwe had that momentum, and then also it seems as if you had given Zimbabwe say, okay, fine, there's the button, go for the victory if you have. What does it say about Test match, especially in a era where everyone seems to be focusing about T20 cricket?
Well, I think it's great for Test cricket. You know, to see how Zimbabwe would have fought yesterday, fought themselves back into the game. You know, believing obviously they could win, and then for us to come today and then pushing for a victory, especially after losing the day, it says a lot for Test cricket now. You know, I believe Test cricket is still alive. You know, a lot of people still love Test cricket. They still cherish it. And this is what Test cricket wants. You know, it wants people to go there and fight, for their countries and never give up. You know, Zimbabwe didn't give up in their first innings batting. It says a lot for Test cricket.
Greg, just as almost on a similar note in terms of the question I'm posing to you, what was your thoughts looking at the Zimbabwe 11 that you guys are facing, really that they're missing a few key faces that you guys are used to seeing playing out for Zimbabwe? What approach did you have for them?
The approach didn't change. I think even a stronger approach, because sometimes you may not play against guys, but Zimbabwe guys are going to come and fight. They don't play obviously a lot of Test cricket, which is unfortunate. So we never take them for granted, to be honest. And obviously it's good to play against them because they have some quality bowlers and batsmen. So obviously it puts in a better position, planning wise for the second Test.
Thank you so much. Greg, good afternoon. And my question is, are you happy with the results of this first test?
I'd obviously prefer to win, but I'm very happy with the effort. We showed today from the start, obviously Zimbabwe, believing they had a chance. And, to see the fight we showed, from starting in the morning, batting, to lunch, setting it up, to press for a win. Was pleased. Obviously would have loved to win, but I was happy with the fight we showed. Despite losing the day, happy with the fight that the team showed.
And what was going through your mind in that last session when you started taking wickets, and at some point it looked like you could snatch the victory after all?
Well, the main focus obviously was 10 good balls, and every wicket we got, obviously it got low in terms of 9 good balls, 8 good balls. And that was a big focus. We knew it wouldn't be easy. The pitch was still a good one. But yeah, it was just about putting balls in the good areas, which we did. And obviously, Zimbabwe, batted well.
Craig, what is the talk in the morning today about probably the time that you guys wanted to bat and the score that you thought you should probably try to take a carrot for Zimbabwe to try and go for it, whilst you guys probably end up winning the game, probably give them enough time to try and go for the win?
Well, looking back now, we could argue, but I was happy with the plan we had from morning in terms of the time. I thought the batsmen did well, to get the runs they did. Because obviously pitch with the field they had set wasn't easy to score runs fast. But I won't change that. It's tough, losing obviously over 90 overs in a game. To obviously trying to make it up in the last day, but was quite happy with how we went about it today as a team. So still quite happy.
So Zimbabwe having 5 debuts as well, 4 outright debuts in Test cricket, and the fact that the highest ever chase was 162 for Zimbabwe in a test match. In hindsight, do you think that maybe 272 with so few overs was a bit too much? I know that ultimately you got a couple of wickets and maybe tight, but do you think that in hindsight you could have declared a little bit earlier?
As I said, I think we had a plan and we were fit. As I said, Zimbabwe really fought well today. As I said, it's tough, losing over a day in a test match. But looking back, you could argue, but still happy with the plans we had today and how we went to work.
So mine is a quick triple. First of all, how does this set up for the second test? And secondly, how important is it for countries like Zimbabwe and the West Indies to play against each other? And thirdly, have you had any experiences outside cricket that you've had so far in your tour?
Well, I think it'd be great, for Zimbabwe to play more Test cricket. And, obviously if we have the time in the schedule, to play Zimbabwe whether here or home would be great. I think more test cricket for both of the nations, is a positive. For the third question, we didn't do much. We went to a few restaurants and stuff, obviously enjoying the food here in Zimbabwe. But I can't remember the first question.
How did this set up for the final, for the second test?
Well,
This result, or this match?
Well, a lot to play for, last test, and obviously everyone is looking to win the series. Luckily one game left, so I think we've got to go back, and obviously plan again once, for the second game. Both as a batting group, and I'm a bowling group, but we can't take anything for granted, and we've got to play some hard days and that's good.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
All right, so great stuff there. Thank you so much, Dara Bartley, doing a great job there with the Cricket West Indies and getting those interviews for us. We talk a lot about West Indies. We must also look at Zimbabwe. They might not be too sorry about how they batted, because we saw Gary Ballance and we saw that extremely well played century. And we also saw some encouraging innings. Craig Irvine hasn't come good, but this might be his opportunity. But Young Tae, the opener, I think he's a very good prospect. All in all, it was not a sad story for Zimbabwe, even though they are missing quite a few players because of injury.
Exactly, Barry. And again, I suppose out of the two teams, Zimbabwe would definitely take a lot more confidence. I know I keep on mentioning this point throughout the series, but this is a team which has not played a single test match in almost 2 years. The last time that they played a game before the first test was against Bangladesh. They lost by 220 runs in July of 2021. So for them to get a draw against that West Indies side, albeit given the circumstances, all of the rain in Bulawayo, is very impressive. Ballance, magnificently played. If he can also replicate that form, they stand a good chance of maintaining at least the draw in this second test. But in particular, I think the interesting battle will actually be with the openers. And one man in particular is Innocent Kaya. I really like the look of him. He's been outstanding in domestic cricket in both the Logan Cup and the 50 over stuff. He scored a 50 in the ODI series against Ireland. He scored 67 on test debut in this series. I just feel like if he can lay the foundation, a bit like you mentioned with the likes of Chanderpaul and Brathwaite for the West Indies, you never know. Zimbabwe might fancy the chances in this particular test match. But the one key thing for me heading into this second and ultimately final test of the series, Barry, is that middle order. Because Ballance was exceptional. 137, give him his plaudits, let him take a bow. But other than that, the captain Craig Irvine across both innings didn't score enough runs. Neither did Chamucha Baba. Neither did the rest of the middle order. I mean, we saw Tafadzwa Seager get some runs in the second innings, but again, a poor first innings for the wicketkeeper batter. So for me, I think for Zimbabwe, yes, they'll be happy. I think they'll be quite confident, actually, after that first test. But at the same time, they've got a lot to learn. They've got a lot to improve on. And in particular, that middle order, that is the one particular section of this team which I'm going to be keeping a very, very close eye on heading into this second test.
The West Indies will look a lot and rue the chances they had in that first test. But the weather played a big part. You spoke a little bit about the weather. Let's put the weather aside and just look at the conditions. Should we expect that same kind of pitch? Yes, it's a different pitch you're going to play on, but the same surface. Should we expect that same kind of pitch to offer the batsman a lot to love, if you want to put it that way?
Well, that is usually the case at the Queen Sports Club, to be honest. It is a very batting-friendly surface. We mentioned this in the preview show. We saw it again in the first test. The West Indies racked up the runs for fun, in particular, batting first. So there are runs to be scored. The surfaces in Bulawayo are usually very low. They're very flat wickets as well. Great if you're a batter. Terrible if you're a seam bowler, in particular in those hot, sticky conditions. It can be an absolute nightmare for the fast bowlers. So we'll have to wait and see what the pitch actually does provide, Barry. But if it is a similar surface, as I said, it'll be interesting to see the different compositions of the two teams, because both teams went to part-size spin bowlers over the course of their innings, which suggests to me that they got the balance wrong across their 11s. Will they rectify that? We'll have to wait and see. But it would be fantastic, wouldn't it, if we saw a really lively, bouncy surface at the Queen Sports Club in the second test? I don't think that's going to be the case. And if that indeed isn't the case, and it is another low, flat wickets, how will each team change their teams, those starting 11s, how they alter the composition to best try and win this test match. I think that's going to be the really interesting thing to watch before the toss in this second test.
How do the teams match up? Zimbabwe have played against the West Indies for eons, but they're still to win a test. Let's talk a bit about how they match up with test cricket where that is concerned.
Yeah, it's very one-sided, isn't it, to be honest, looking at the head-to-head. They've played each other in 11 tests now. The West Indies have won 7. There have been 4 draws. Zimbabwe have never beaten the men in maroon. So even though the West Indies will be disappointed not to finish off that test match in the first game of this series, they have still maintained that unbeaten record. And that's something which, when people say, oh, this second test is a dead rubber, it's only Zimbabwe. You don't want to be the first team to lose to that opposition. So the West Indies will be up for this test match. They'll be wanting that victory, take the series, and gather some momentum and confidence to take with them into the rest of the year. With that being said, though, Barry, that is a lot easier said than done. It really is. This surface is going to be tough. You're going to have to grind with both the bats and the ball in hand. And again, I do just wonder whether or not we'll see the extra spinners. That's one thing which I keep on coming back to. But I just want to see an extra spin option, in particular for the West Indies. And I want to see how Brathwaite manages them. I think that'll be an interesting thing to watch out for in this second and ultimately deciding test match of the series.
All right. When we come back on tour, we're going to talk to a man who has been so inspiring for the West Indies. I'm not talking about Craig Brathwaite, but someone who is partnering him, Tajrine Shandapal. He's up next. Stay with us.
To the top, it's time to jump up, people, are you ready? To the top, it's time to jump up, people, are you ready?
So welcome back to On Tour. Again, a reminder that the West Indies and Zimbabwe play in the second test, of course, starts on Saturday. Live coverage right here on Rush. Well, the story of the first test, besides the draw, of course, has been about Tajrine Shandapal, son of legendary West Indies batsman Shivnarine Shandapal, another jewel of Guyana. And you have to say that he was certainly someone who we love to watch. After he made his test debut in Australia, many people said, hey, this could be the fix that Craig Brathwaite has been looking for in his test team. And he did not disappoint. He scored an unbeaten 100, 207, and he looked really good. Dario Barthy from Cricket West Indies continues to do a great job. He caught up with young Tajrine Shandapal. Here's something you didn't know about him.
Tej, firstly, I want to ask you, what was the feeling like receiving your test cap from Brian Lara?
Well, you know, it's a special feeling, receiving your cap, and from the legend himself, it's even better.
What did he say when he handed you that cap?
He said he was there when my dad made his debut, and he think he would be proud right now watching on the game and seeing me receive my cap.
And just as you mentioned your dad, coming through the system, how did you deal with the pressure of being Shiv's son?
But you know, it's something people always talk about, so I just try and be myself. I can't be him. I could only do what I can do, and yeah, be me.
In terms of your batting style, a lot of people say that you're similar, you take your time. Is that his influence shining through, or is that just something you developed throughout your career?
Well, you know, I started training with my granddad when I was little, so he always the kind of guy, he just instilling you, don't give your wicket away, and you could only get runs in the middle, that kind of stuff, so yeah. I think it started with my granddad.
And I know that you've done a bit of training with your dad as well. Is that the same type of idea that he tries to instill in you, or what is his coaching style?
Yeah, well, since he came, well, he was living in the US a bit, and then in Guyana. Well, now he's back in the US, but at the time when he was in Guyana, we would train together, so yeah, basically some of his teaching and batting style kind of rub off a bit.
Was cricket always your first choice, or have you ever thought about doing anything else for a living?
Oh, well, I guess like playing youth cricket, and yeah, from playing youth cricket I thought about, cricket, yeah. Never really anything much else.
So if Tajuan Shandafal wasn't a professional cricketer, what would you be doing today?
I really don't know. I haven't given it much thought.
Well, good. We hope you don't have to give it much thought.
Fingers crossed.
In Test cricket, do you have any goals for this upcoming year?
I'll try and take it one game at a time. Every time I go out and bat, try and get a start again and try and bat as long as possible. Yeah.
You mentioned taking it one game at a time, 2 test matches on their belt so far, with notable performances. What was the feeling like when you first got the call to represent the West Indies?
Well, you know, you're obviously thrilled, excited to be representing the West Indies. Yeah, happy feeling, excited, and thankfully things went well, so yeah, even better.
Who did you get that call from?
Chairman, Mr. Yens. Yeah.
And what was your reaction? What did you do immediately after?
Yeah, you know me, I'm a quiet guy. I didn't really jump up or anything, but you know, you're feeling the emotions inside. Yeah.
Who was the first person you told about that call?
Probably my mother, because I live with my mother. Yeah. So yeah, I live with my mom back in Guyana, so yeah, most likely I think her.
And when you told your dad, what was his reaction?
Well, he's like, you know, it's a tough series, so you gotta be prepared and be ready mentally and everything else, yeah.
That was before he said congratulations?
You know, I was thinking about what you gotta do, so, yeah.
Would you say that he has been the biggest influence in your career so far?
Well, like I said before, it started with my granddad, because from the early phases of my career and age, my dad he was obviously playing, so he's not around much, and yeah, so my granddad.
And other than your dad and possibly your batting partner, which other cricketers do you look up to in world cricket? Anyone that you have watched over time, maybe model your game off of, past and present?
Well, you know, you watch like Alistair Cook, Sangakkara, my dad, Lara when they were playing. You watch all the good players, Sachi and Virat, so many, you know. Can't name all of them, Ricky Ponting and all these guys, so.
And anything out of their game that you always said you would bring into your game when you got to the Test cricket level?
I guess you watch some of the shots they play, but obviously I don't have all those kind of shots like some of the other guys, but try and keep it simple and do what I could do.
You mentioned Brian Lara, who you have here in Zimbabwe as a mentor. What is it like working with Brian Lara, and how much motivation does it give you when you walk out onto the pitch or when he says a kind word to you?
He's a very cool guy, easy to approach, and you offer a few tips here and there, stuff you can add to your game and improve on, and apart from like shots and that kind of stuff, like how you think about the game and these kind of stuff, yeah.
How is it having Craig Brathwaite as an opening partner?
Craig, a very cool guy, you know. I guess similar to me. So we get along pretty well. When you go to bat, he always share his views and things that you could do to negate certain bowlers, and yeah, we talk about what the ball doing and what we could do, and yeah, that kind of stuff.
What do you admire most about Craig? Firstly on the field and then off the field?
Well, like I say, he's a very cool guy, and you feel, you know, I think he is strong mentally. Yeah, bat for long periods, and the runs show.
And I'm guessing that's something that you plan to emulate as well in your game.
Yeah, well, hopefully, you know, try your best every time and hopefully you get some runs.
And what about off the field? How is he as a captain, a man manager?
Yeah, He's simple, man. Easy to get along with. He does his thing easily in the background, so yeah.
How have you enjoyed your time so far in this West Indies setup?
Well, the guy's been very welcoming and everybody seemed to get along well with new players and even the guys who were here before, they treat you well and you can have a conversation with any one of them.
Who is your best friend in the team currently?
Well, before Moti come back, I always playing with Josh. So, yeah, Josh and Jaden and Andy and those guys. Yeah.
And you mentioned spending a lot of time with Moti. How good is it to have a fellow countryman in the team that's around your age and able to assist you?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Moti since under 15, so I'm comfortable with him. You get a little partner to go around here and there. Yeah.
And lastly, anything that you want to say to the Maroon fans that have been supporting you since your debut and will continue to support you throughout your career?
Looking to try my best and get some runs and keep supporting. Thanks.
Thanks, Tej.
Welcome.
So fantastic stuff. We look forward to seeing Tajurai Chanderpaul in that second test. Will he again repeat, and will the West Indies be able to beat Zimbabwe for their 8th test victory against them? Or is it going to be the 5th draw? Or is it going to be the first ever victory for Zimbabwe? A lot to play for because, you don't want the Zimbabweans then to win the series 1-0. And it's all, of course, forgotten the hard work that was done in that very first test. Final words from you, Aaron.
Well, Barry, it's going to be an interesting one. First and foremost, we hope that the weather does not play spoil sports in Bulawayo this week, because if it doesn't, we have got a very, very interesting test match on our hands indeed. Can the likes of Brathwaite and Chanderpaul potentially put this series to bed with another emphatic opening stand? We'll have to wait and find out. But for me in particular, I really want to see a fight from the Chevrons. I want to see that middle order come to the forefront. I want to see the spinners take control of this game as well, whether that is the West Indian duo of Chase and Moti. Maybe they could have Jamel Warrican in there as well as a third option. I know I keep on mentioning that, but that battle between spin, the bat and the ball is going to be absolutely fascinating. And again, it's just going to be a great, great encounter. The fact is, the West Indies will want this for the long term. They want confidence. They want momentum to take with them into the rest of the year. And for Zimbabwe, they're on home soil in front of the home fans. There's history on the line here, because if they can win this, again, wouldn't that be huge for Zimbabwean cricket to finally beat the West Indies in the biggest arena of them all? It's going to be a great game, Barry. In terms of a prediction, I know we often do predictions for these shows. If it goes to all 5 days, I do think the West Indies will be too strong. But with that being said, never discount the Chevrons of Zimbabwe. If Balance can score some runs, Kaya can score some runs, Mavuta can take some wickets, who knows? Anything is possible. But I think if we do get a full allocation in this particular test match, I'm going with the West Indies replicating the result of 2017 and winning this series 1-0.
Thank you so much, Aaron Vowles. Well, of course, the test match starts at 4 a.m. And Aaron will be back here at the conclusion of the test to discuss what happened on tour with West Indies and Zimbabwe. I'm Barry Wilkinson on behalf of Aaron Vowles here on Rush. Bye-bye for now.
Time to jump up, people, are you ready?